Good morning, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. Hope everybody is enjoying a snowy Friday morning. Feels fitting, haven't had snow in a couple of weeks. But now with the spring games coming up, I'm going to be traveling for the Avalanche. Feels fitting that we have this snowstorm to deal with. Got a fun show planned for you. We're going to talk football and hoops. Nice balance like we've had of late. This time we are going to do football first and hoops second. We'll talk about the latest commitments. If you tuned in on Wednesday, both of the hoops targets that I said you should keep an eye on have since committed. So we'll talk about both of those latest additions for CSU men's hoops. Augustinas, Kiudulas, and Jevin Nuniz should be in the starting lineup, I think, but we'll get into all of that later. I'll kind of talk about just some way too early thoughts on this class as a whole, how the roster and the rotation might shape out. Obviously, way too early at this point to say with any type of certainty. But I think it's a really intriguing class. At the end, I'll get into 10 things I love about CSU and Fort Collins. Happy I Love CSU Day to those that celebrate. In years past, we've had some events at the DNVR bar with the Alumni Association. Unfortunately, didn't happen this year, but hopefully we can do some more stuff with them down the line. I'm obviously so grateful for everything I've gotten out of the CSU experience, from, being a fan in my younger years to obviously being a student and everything that's come since in a professional career. I don't even know where I would be, without CSU. So I'm pretty certain I can say I'm in the top tier when it comes to a genuine love for CSU, the green and gold, everything that comes with it. I did want to appreciate, or I wanted to say I appreciate, Joel Cantalamessa, host of the Ram Nation podcast. Went on with him yesterday. I believe that pod is live. You can go check it out. They picked my brain on some of the stuff we'll talk about today, but some other stuff as well. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi joined the show. The guys asked him who is going to be the offensive play caller. That's been something that's obviously been a big discussion point amongst Ram fans. I reported a couple of months back that based on everything I had heard behind the scenes, the expectation was for Matt Mumme to take over those play calling duties. Said a couple of times now, but unless I go back on that, I do stand by that report, particularly given how just odd the program has been about it. Jay has been really coy when he's been asked about that type of stuff. Braden told the guys you should go back and listen to it in entirety, but he told those guys that he wasn't sure what he was allowed to talk about in terms of play calling and scheme. So it does seem like it's not just as simple as it's going to be the status quo. Maybe it's going to end up being a collaborative effort. Maybe Jay hasn't 100% made up his mind, or maybe he's gone back on it. Who knows? We'll see how it all shapes out this fall, but I did think that was interesting. So go check out that pod. Joel, kind of the Ram father, if you will. He's really the pioneer behind digital CSU Rams content. And frankly, I wouldn't have the platform I have. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for him. So I did want to show some love to the OG there. They do great stuff. They're, as passionate as Ram fans can be. If you missed it, the DNVR Die Hard sale is active at the moment. We had one in March Madness. We've got another one going right now. You can become a Die Hard for the first time for just $36. I mean, that's basically the price of a shirt, which you get for free with it. Don't miss out on this deal. Great time to get access to all of our premium content. I've given you guys recruiting scoops, written features. If you're into hockey, I'll have some stuff on that side as well as the CSU stuff, these next couple of months. But take advantage of that sale if you have not. Also, if you have any recommendations in terms of restaurants or things I should check out while I'm in Dallas for the next 4 days or so, I would love some. Never been there other than the airport, so it'll be a kind of a new experience for me. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk football. The most recent transfer portal departures, nobody super shocking or significant. A couple of backup specialists I know are in the portal. Wish those guys well. Will Hutchison, Jake Dennis, punter and a long snapper, respectively. But the bigger headline news was that Dylan Goffney has seemingly played his final game as a Ram. If you remember back, he transferred over from SMU prior to the 2023 season. We had him on the pod. The hope was kind of that he could be a solid number 2, number 3 option, behind Torrey Horton and some of those other guys at the time, Lewis Brown and Justice Ross Simmons. The receiving core has been a bit of a revolving group these past couple of seasons, so there's a variety of reasons why that hasn't worked out, but Goffney just unfortunately couldn't stay on the field. He only played 4 games this past year, and I honestly wondered at the time if his intent was going to be to maintain eligibility so that he could then play his last season elsewhere. The fact that he stuck around through January was a little surprising to me, but that could have always been for academic reasons as well. 6 catches for 57 yards last year, 29 catches in 15 games total, had 2 touchdowns in his CSU career. He did make some nice plays in that Boise comeback a couple of years ago. He is somebody who I do feel like never quite reached his potential here and maybe was not fully maximized, but I don't know how much of that to contribute on lack of opportunity or lack of him rising to the moment, because I think both are probably fair assessments depending on your perspective of things. Like if you asked him versus if you asked the staff, I definitely have heard a couple of times that it just wasn't gelling the way that they hoped it would. I always enjoyed covering him. Thought he was somebody who gave good perspective, was thoughtful with his answers. Definitely was great on the pod. So I do wish him well. Hope he's able to find a good spot. And I honestly don't think it's a situation where Ram fans should panic. I say that with all due respect to Dylan Goffney. I just think that he likely would have been a number 2 receiver this year, maybe even a number 3, depending on how things ended up shaking out. I've heard a couple of people say now, and I would agree with this, but Tommy Maher probably assumed the role that DG would have hoped to have within this offense. And said it a couple of times now, but Tommy Maher no longer just a feel-good story, walk on that's earned his way into the fold here. Like he's going to be somebody that's going to be a legitimate contributor in this offense. He's always open, great pass catcher, tremendous work ethic. Like there's a reason that he has impressed the coaches, and it's just because he does all the little things right behind the scenes. He's definitely earned that role, especially just given kind of how, I guess, unpredictable or unreliable Goffney has ended up being these last couple of years. And I don't mean that as a slight to him, but your best ability is certainly dependability and availability, and just never really found his role within the offense. This is what it comes down to. I'm not trying to put him down or anything like that. He's got good size. He's a good athlete. He's somebody that I think can be a productive wide receiver in the right situation. But for whatever reason, it just hasn't panned out. Lewis Brown also posted that he is officially in the portal. Unsurprising, he does have a year of eligibility remaining. Once he got dismissed, though, that wasn't going to be at CSU. A good way to kind of transition into our next topic here, which is just kind of some general observations on all of the position groups. Jacob Kennedy in the Toyota chat wants to know, how concerned should we be about the wide receiver group as a whole? Honestly, I'm not that concerned at the moment. Now, if you have a mass exodus, or if you have a couple of the key contributors end up not being a part of the picture come August and September, that could change things. But as of now, I'm not panicking. Like, I honestly, and I said this in the winter, and I'm not trying to put anybody down, but like losing Jamari Person and Caleb Goody, it hurt for the bowl game. I don't think it was that big of a deal in terms of the long-term view of this program. Goody's a burner. I mean, he can run with the best of them. He had a long ways to go in terms of route running, Being consistent as a pass catcher. Drops as a whole were just an issue for the whole receiving core last year in the tight end room. Really missed some chances to create some big plays, I felt like. But I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say, about the receiving group. I think Jordan Ross is as advertised. Sometimes the 4-star ranking coming out of high school can be a little bit deceptive. He passes the eye test with flying colors. He's a legit athlete, always open, tremendous route runner, probably the most explosive receiver in that room. I think he's going to be great. Tommy Maher, again, it's not just like a feel-good story. He's going to be a legitimate inside slot receiver for this team, and I think he's going to be a playmaker. Be a safety blanket too for Braden. Taylor has really impressed. He was somebody who they almost added a couple of years ago. He ended up at Northern Arizona, I believe for academic reasons, but it's come full circle. He's turning heads this spring, as is Keenan Higgins, San Jose State transfer who was injured most of last year, but he's got good size, a little bit more length than some of these other guys. And then, if you can hit on just a couple of these other younger guys you have behind the scenes, and this is assuming they'll all be here, obviously, like who knows, somebody like Levon Brown could have a bigger impact as the season goes on. They've got a couple other guys with size. I'm trying to blank on who I'm trying to reference right now. I got my little roster sheet here, cheat sheet. Stephon Daly, goodness gracious, talked about him the other day. Just went blank there for a second. He had a nice bowl game. He's somebody who needs to be more consistent in terms of the day-to-day process. But I think, could, potentially be somebody that ends up being a playmaker for the offense. Definitely gives them a little bit of length, which is probably lacking as a whole. But I think the strength for the passing offense this year, assuming that, again, these guys stay healthy and you have the expected group of Jordan Ross and Maher and all these guys, and hopefully Armani Winfield is able to get right. Maybe Kojo Antwi plays in the fall, maybe he doesn't, depending on his health. We'll see. Jackson Warren, Rocky Bears, the tight ends and all that. Like, assuming you have the group that you're anticipating, I think one of the strengths for the Rams this year could be the fact that you're not going into the season with the mentality of we are really going to be leaning on this one guy. Torrey Horton's incredible. I think had he stayed healthy, would have had an outside shot to play his way into the late first round. Still could potentially go in the second round. Like a lot of the draft projections, if you look at the draft guide from ALLCITY's Fran Duffy, he has him going 70th, I think, early in the third round to Jacksonville. I think that'd be a good opportunity for him. They certainly need receiver help. But like, because they were expecting for him to be the monster that he was in 2022, so much of the game plan and so much of the vision for the offense was based around, we're going to be able to get the ball to Torrey. And I just feel like when he then, got injured a couple of times, and obviously last year was drastic, but even the year before, like it was a lot of him getting dinged up here or there, play for a quarter, be out for half a quarter. It just kind of put the offense in a wonky spot. And I don't know. I just like the idea of having a stable group of like 4, 5, 6 pass catchers, whether that be receivers or just a mix of all those guys, receivers, tight ends, running backs. I do think that from a consistency standpoint, it's going to help the offense just not being so solely reliant on one guy. And if he's not out there making plays, balling out, then it feels like you just have no options to stretch the field. Like Caleb Goody came along as the season progressed. A lot of his big plays were just like mesh routes where, he was able to use that speed. Somebody takes a wrong angle and boom, he's gone for a big 40, 50-yard gain. But I think they're going to have a couple of more guys that are just consistent 3-down type receivers, guys you can stretch the field with, be dependable. We'll see. I don't know if any of these guys are going to be blue chip first rounders or anything like that, but I do think that the strength of the unit puts them in a better position than maybe we've seen in some years past. We're going to continue to talk about all this. I've already gone a little bit longer in this first segment than I intended, but that's good. We've got plenty of football to talk about while it's still here. We're going to take a quick break. We do need to pay the bills and shout out a couple of our partners. We'll do that. Then we'll keep this conversation rolling, and then we'll transition the convo over to Hoops. If you got anything you want us to comment on, throw it our way in the Toyota chat. We'll get to it a little bit later if I don't get to it right away. But like I said, we're going to shout out those partners real quick, and then we'll keep it rolling. Coors Light encourages you to choose a chill state of mind. Life is all about how you deal with the things that get thrown your way. It's been 75 degrees of late. We're maybe hoping to enjoy some of that sunshine this weekend. Mother Nature, she's got other plans, obviously, for all of us around these parts. And, you can frown, you can, sulk and stare out the window and curse, Mother Nature, all that kind of crap. But you could also make the most of it. Maybe you have some pizza and, watch a movie with the fam, invite some friends over, play some darts, something like that. Life's all about embracing the little things, choosing a chill state of mind. When you do, kick back, relax, crack open an ice cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, cold as the Rockies, Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Choose chill this winter, then reach for a Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door by visiting CoorsLight.com/DNVR, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I also want to talk to you guys about Empire today. Nobody, and I mean nobody, does it better than our friends at Empire. With Empire, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, plus a price match guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, they've got copycats out there, but those copycats, they can't touch Empire, not on their quality, not on their service, not on their speed. They just try and offer you a bunch of low-quality junk that, frankly, Empire won't even keep in their selection. They're not trying to overwhelm you with 8 million choices and get you to a point where you're just going to pick some run-of-the-mill options simply to end the nightmare of a process. They're trying to find or help you find the type of flooring they would put in their own home. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can get a $350 discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions to apply. See EmpireToday.com/DNVR for details. All right, let's keep it rolling. Let's keep the conversation on football, and then we will ultimately move on to hoops. Appreciate everybody that's rocking with us this morning. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. Before we went to break there, we were talking a little bit about the wide receivers. I was asked from Jacob in the Toyota chat about how worried we should be about the group. I personally am not panicked about the state of the offense, but let's get into it. It's not a quarterback competition. We'll start there. I've been asked about it a couple of times. Like, is there anybody that could legitimately push BFN for that starting role based on how I have seen the snaps, divvied and all of that based on just the way that the program is conducting themselves right now? That has not been the case. I do think that there is a battle for that backup quarterback spot going into the year. Brousseau probably has the upper hand, just given he was the 2 all last year. But they are excited about the possibility of Darius Curry. Both of those guys had a chance to go live this past weekend. Curry probably had the better day of the two, at least based on the throws that I saw, at least had the bigger plays down the field. But honestly, based on anything we've seen from practice, and it's a small sample size, and I'm not there, every single day for every rep or anything like that. But based on everything I've seen over the last 2 years, there's nothing that would give me reason to believe the best option at quarterback is not already starting. Now, I know that BFN needs to be a little bit more consistent at times. I think there's a lot of factors that have worked against him, from the scheme change to the revolving door they've had at receiver and just some weird circumstances that really have not been in his control and have put him in a weird spot. But I'm hoping this year we can kind of see him take the best of both worlds. Like, he's got a big arm. They have the ability to stretch the field vertically. Can he hit on some of those big explosive plays, maybe make the offense a little bit more potent this year, but also kind of learn from some of the ball security stuff that he dealt with last year and, limit the turnovers and all that. I know it's obviously a big focus for the Rams. I thought he did a great job of that last year. But what I especially would like to see him do is be able to lean on that ground game, because I don't think you just completely go away from it. But can you then create off of it? Can you give him more opportunities to, roll out off a bootleg? Can you take advantage of his athleticism a little bit? And can you just maybe burn teams over the top? Like, I felt like last year the Rams ran the ball with consistency. They weren't always great in some of those 3rd and short scenarios, which was a bit odd given how well they seem to run the ball on the other downs. But I think the key this year is building off of that foundation and that ground game, but also opening up the pass game a little bit and just making this offense a little bit more scary. Because as we saw in the bowl game, like when the ground game wasn't working, Miami's just stacking the box and they shut it down. The Rams weren't able to adjust. They weren't able to burn them over the top. And that is what I would like to see this year. As far as that running back room looks, I think it's in a really good spot. I would say it's probably the deepest group on the team, at least in the spring. A lot can change between now and game one, just from a health standpoint, from who's in the building standpoint, even. Obviously, we see it in the portal era all the time. But I think Justin Marshall and Jalen Dupree can be as dynamic of a 1-2 punch as CSU's had in the backfield in a long time. Probably at least since Dylan and Izzy when they were playing well. But, maybe you go even further back than that. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be Damon Washington and Kevin McDougal or anything like that. But I think that Marshall's explosive. He can be a home run hitter. He's also somebody who's probably best in that like 12 to 15 carries per game range. I think Jalen Dupree, a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit more durable. If I had to guess, by the time the season is like in the full swing of things, by the time we get to the league slate, it wouldn't surprise me if Jalen Dupree has kind of taken over that lead back role. I think he has the opportunity to be pretty special. I mean, the vision, the ability to make one cut and go. He looks like an NFL running back out there, and CSU has not had a lot of those over the years, so he looks different when you watch him compared to some of the other guys. I really think he can be a star. I was really excited that CSU was able to hang on to him, and from what it sounds like, he's healthy for the first time in a while, feels really confident in the playbook. I think he has a good opportunity to be like your leading rusher and to be potentially an all-conference type back. But even, some of the other guys like Lloyd Avant and Van Shield, if he can stay healthy, I think there's a lot of roles to be had in that backfield. But I would say the depth top to bottom is the best in the backfield that it's been, certainly in the Norvell era. And I know that people were a little disappointed that it didn't work out with Damian Henderson. You look back a couple of years ago, some of those highly acclaimed, commits that they were able to bring in didn't end up working out. That's how it goes with the portal sometimes. And recruiting in general, like, it's easy to get swept up into the hype and put all these lofty expectations on these guys before we ever even see them set foot on campus. But you just never know. Like, there's a million factors to why a player might not work out, from culture shock to just general immaturity to injuries to, like, not meshing with the staff. Like, there's a lot of reasons you have to let the process play out. But Dupree is somebody that came in with significant recruiting interest, had some big schools come in on him late, and the fact that CSU was able to sign him and the fact that they've hung on to him, I think that is going to be a big win for the offense this year. And I think we're really going to see him unleashed in a major way. We've already kind of talked about the receivers, so I don't think there's a ton more to say there. I am really excited about Tay Lanier. I think him and Keenan Higgins are a couple of guys to keep an eye on that have really made the most of their opportunities this spring and are kind of taking advantage of some of the guys that we thought that would be in the mix, whether that be Lewis Brown or Kojo or even Armani Winfield, who has been dinged up all spring and hasn't been participating. I think those guys have really taken advantage. The tight end room is as deep as it's been under Norvell. They've got great size, 3 dudes, 6'5" plus that can all move, that are solid route runners with sure hands. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets this year. I think we're going to see a lot of attacking up the seam, especially in the red zone too. I think you can throw 2, even 3 tight ends if they end up liking Carlos Anaya as much as I think they might. I think especially with the lack of size you have at the receiver room, that is an area where you can really lean on, and I think it's going to be big for opening some things up out wide. I think that was part of the problem, and maybe part of why CSU hasn't had quite as much success with some of the vertical passing game, is they're able, the defenses are able to really kind of shade the sidelines, because the Rams haven't had really a consistent threat up the middle other than when Dallin Holker was here. That's kind of the only point that's been the case in the Norvell era. And obviously that was the best that the passing offenses looked. I don't think that's a coincidence. And when you look at the previous success that Norvell had in Nevada, very similar. Like they always had somebody like Cole Turner that they can lean on. I think it's been a big missing element of the offense. And I think that coming back is going to be big for trusting the passing element to be a more consistent element. TJ says CSU should pick players from the top FCS programs. Yeah, I mean, you try, but that's not as simple. Like the best offensive tackle coming from the D2 ranks, Ferris State, he landed at Iowa. Like Power 4 schools are recruiting the lower ranks too. I've heard the North Dakota State running back's going to go P4, maybe even in this state. Everybody is going after the same types. Now CSU's had some success. You know, they've signed a couple of guys from North Dakota State the past couple of years that have been able to make the jump. You know, they've had multiple offensive linemen come from the FCS ranks that have been highly successful at CSU. So it is something that the Rams can do, and it's a process they can replicate. But you do still have to recruit the high school ranks, or you're not going to have any foundation or continuity within your roster. And like, you have to be able to get some of these guys that can be here for a couple of years and develop, and then ultimately you lean on them. It's becoming harder and harder to do that. But especially like with the offensive line, which is where we're going next, the fact that people like Ader Urion Baranchea and Tanner Morley are as expected. I've heard good things about Philip Ocon. I just think that's going to be huge, because it's just hard to hit when you have to, replace that many pieces in your lineup year after year, and it's hard to establish continuity. And I think that's one of the biggest factors in football, and something that is really impacting college football today. And I think it's impacted the quality of play with a lot of these schools, is the fact that they're just having to rebuild these rosters on the fly. It's tough to do. Moving things over to the defensive side, they could use another edge rusher too. I feel good about Jaquez Evans. I think Kennedy McDowell is well suited to be an impactful stand-up edge rusher after, starting his career as a more traditional defensive end. I also feel like they're one injury away from being in a really bad spot as far as pass rushing depth goes. You can send some of those backers too. Like Owen Long is somebody that moves really well. There's little things like that you can do, but I would like to see them maybe pursue, another edge rusher if possible. They're a little bit light in the D line as a whole. We'll see. They're going to play an aggressive, a blitz heavy style of defense under Summers, so probably going to be rotating a lot anyways. So maybe that's not as big of a factor as I'm worried about, but I do worry, especially if some injuries add up and you lose a key guy or two in that front seven. Are the Rams going to have the depth and the size necessary to stop the run? That is a little bit of a concern for me going into the year. We'll see. But that's just kind of my way too early observations from spring. Linebacker depth is pretty encouraging, I think, despite the fact that they lost their two starters from last year in Boom Jock and Chase Wilson. I think Ellis is the real deal. I think Owen Long can be a star. I think his ceiling is as high as anybody on the defensive side. So I feel pretty good about the backers. And you've got a couple of other guys, Drew Rodriguez, who will work into the rotation, and you feel pretty good about that. The secondary is athletic but inconsistent, I would say. You see guys make plays, and I think at corner they've got more size and speed than they've had in years past. Lamondre Joe, somebody who's turned some heads. CJ Blocker from Utah really looks good. We haven't seen a ton of Jahari Rogers yet because he's been dinged up, but he obviously was somebody we were excited about. Safety will be interesting to me. Do they go out and try and find somebody with a little bit more experience or not? you've got some young guys that have a chance to make a leap in AJ Noland and Jet Vincent. You also have Aiden Hector, who you can lean on a little bit as well, although I like him better near the line of scrimmage than I do, patrolling the secondary. So I will be kind of curious to see how that all pans out. But I feel pretty good about the athletes that they brought in. It's just a matter of, will they have enough depth, and how quickly can these pieces gel together? As far as the specialists go, I don't think the starting kicker is on the roster right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Brian Hansen just ends up being the starting punter and kicker. That might be their best option as of now. But that's where we're at. That's kind of a little summation of where we're at with the team going into the last week or so of spring football. Still have the spring game. Who knows how much you can actually take away from it. It's not really a real game these days, but exciting nonetheless. We're going to keep this rolling. We're going to transition over to basketball here. Shout out to Grayson and then Toyota Chat says, glad you are back. Much love. We're going to pay the bills real quick, though, and then we're going to talk a little bit of hoops. All right, let's see. What do we got here? We got UC Health, and they encourage you to live extraordinary. UC Health is doing all kinds of stuff just to help you live your life better, day to day. It's all about those little choices, trying to find ways, whether it's just snacks, getting exercise, to live your life in a more extraordinary way. The DNVR Ram Show is brought to you by UC Health, the official healthcare partner of the Broncos, the Avalanche, all kinds of teams around the state. And I personally have been trying to get back on that exercise train. That's how I've been trying to live extraordinary. It's tough. It's tough with travel and all these games and stuff. Haven't been eating the best. Gained a couple of pounds, between you guys and me. This is a safe space, right? But I'm trying to do little things each and every day to just live a slightly healthier life. And I think if you do that, if you stack more good days than bad days, you're going to be in a really good spot. So shout out to our partners at UC Health. Finally, I want to talk to you guys about Game Time. Nobody does it better than our friends over at Game Time. If you're looking for NHL or NBA playoff tickets, if you're looking for tickets to see a show at the DCPA, stand-up comedy, you name it, they've got it. One of their new awesome features is Game Time Picks, which is a curation function that allows you to just sort through the endless selection and see the best of the best. Game Time has the lowest price guarantee. They also have some of the best ticket coverage around. Their all-in pricing allows you to see exactly what you're going to pay without getting blindsided with a bunch of fees at the end. If you listen to the show, you know how much that drives me crazy. Service fees. What's the service? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Let's talk hoops, and then we'll wrap up with 10 things I love about CSU and Fort Collins. Had to cheat a little bit, made it the Fort Collins area. There are 10 things I love about CSU, but the initial list that I constructed, maybe a little bit too much of a deep cut, especially if you're an alum that's like not on campus every single day. I'm obviously around CSU much more than most alumni are. If you missed it, Augustinas, Kiudulas, and Jevin Nuniz rounded out the 2025 transfer class for CSU men's basketball under Ali Farouk-Manesh. Really, really like both of these guys. I think they're going to be in the starting lineup game one. I would say that really the last four additions, I think, are likely going to be your starters then alongside Bemba. Again, so much can happen between now and the start of the season. Like practice doesn't start until like late September, October. So we've got a long way to go. But Muniz comes over from Florida Gulf Coast University, and Kiudulas, who goes by Augie, so that's what we're going to refer to him as, much easier to say too. He comes over from the Virginia Military Institute. I know some of these guys don't have the same name brand value as, a Kerry Booth or some of these other additions. But I'm telling you, some of these guys that are transferring up, if you will, between Pasquarelli and Augie and Nuniz, I would be really surprised if their game does not translate well. I'd be very surprised if they were not productive pieces for the Rams in year one under Ali. And I think that this 2025 recruiting class as a whole has really come together nicely. Looking at Augie, skilled ball handler, good size, 6'8", 215 pounds. He's aggressive going downhill to the hoop. He's got nice touch in the paint, nice passing instincts. I'm not sure he's quite the passer out of the post. Said that the other day that like somebody like JJ Avila was, but I do think the instincts and the skill are there. I think he gives you somebody to lean on, particularly early in the season, while hopefully Kerry Booth is able to develop behind the scenes. Like, first of all, Augie's just played a lot more basketball these last couple of years, and in general, he's an older player. Kerry Booth, despite the fact that he's going to be in his third year, he's only 19 years old, and he hardly played this past year. He just needs time in the gym, behind the scenes to work and grow. And I'd say similar things about Jace Butler, like very, very athletic, really high ceiling. If everything were to hit perfectly, those two guys could be absolute steals for CSU, like true, diamonds in the rough scenario coming over from P4 programs where it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But I think you also have to be aware of the fact that it is a gamble to go with guys like that are relatively unproven. And there's probably a reason that they weren't playing. Now, you're dropping down from, the high major to a mid major. So maybe some of that athleticism and some of those plus traits are going to stand out a little bit more against teams like San Jose State and, Nevada than if you're going up against Big Ten competition. Like, I think that's fair, but it's always a gamble. And you bring over 6 transfers. If you hit on 3 of them, you feel really good. 4 is incredible, but you're probably going to miss on 1 or 2 of these guys, just being realistic. All of them, you can see the vision and you can see what the thought process is and why they were brought over. Again, I think the staff, just in terms of filling their positions of need with guys that on paper can fill those roles, they did a really good job. And they had a lot more success than they have in recent years in terms of hitting on their top targets. From what I've heard, they landed 6 of their 7 top portal targets. Who that 7th guy was, I don't actually know. I'll try and find that out and confirm that for you guys. But I think that it's pretty clear that CSU is swimming in different waters than they were before. And I think that the success that the program has had in recent years, along with the national relevancy and just a significant increase in NIL investment from the fan base, has put CSU in a really good spot moving forward. And I think this recruiting class here is a lot. It's a lot why we believed in Ali, right? Like, we knew he was going to be a dynamite recruiter. I had essentially no doubts about that's part translating and him being able to be a successful guy in terms of talent acquisition. The key now is getting those pieces to gel and can you get guys to buy into a role? Because I do think one of the things people have pointed out, and it's a fair comment. I mean, it's not even really a critique. It's just a comment. But they've got 11 guys right now that could very realistically play in the rotation. That's probably too many. You probably don't have minutes for that many guys. Maybe in November in the non-conference slate, but especially by the time, conference play rolls around, you're going to trim that rotation probably more like 8 or 9, sometimes 9 or 10. CSU was able to go 10 deep last year, which was a strength. I think it allowed the Rams to not run out of gas in the same way they did the year before. There was a lot of scheduling factors in that as well. But that will be a bit of a challenge. It's a good problem to have, having that many guys that are, in theory, capable of playing and playing well for you. But how do you get everybody to buy into their different role? I think it's going to be a lot of newcomers in the starting lineup, which can potentially rub some guys the wrong way that were returners. but there's also an opportunity for some of these guys to come back to take their game to the next level. And they obviously have the advantage of familiarity and continuity and having already played under these coaches and in this system, that they should be able to hit the ground running. Again, I do think Augie will be the starting four. I've had some pushback online about, Booth and him being a 4-star high school prospect. Augie's a 4-star transfer. So a couple of those guys, Butler and Booth, were 4-star high school prospects, but a couple of these guys, Pasquarelli, as well as Rex Steiner and Augie, they're all 4-star transfers. I don't know if I've seen a ranking for Nuniz or not, but I like Nuniz. I like his game. He's got good size, 6'6", 215, helps you make up for some of that length you lose with Neat Clifford no longer in the mix. It's not cute. I don't know if his handle is quite as flashy, and I don't know if he's going to be the same type of scorer that somebody like Neat Clifford was. Like, I don't think his game is quite as versatile as that. But I also like that it's not a lot of nonsense. It's just using that size and strength to get downhill, to get to the rim. He likes catch and shoot opportunities from the perimeter. Certainly could improve in terms of efficiency from deep. But again, like a lot of these guys, I think you put them in the right system. We're going to see a lot of them shoot the ball better than they have in previous spots. With that length, he's hard to contest. And although he's not, 40% from 3-point or anything like that, he is good enough that you have to respect the shot. And with those long strides that he takes, if you overcommit, you might foul him or you might blow past him, and it only takes him, about a step and a half to get to the hoop. I think he's a big time commitment. I've heard New Mexico was in on him. I've heard some significant programs were going after Nunez. So I would be very surprised if he does not translate well. Averaged about 15 points a game at Delaware State a couple of years ago. Did dip to 11 points a game this past year, but had career high averages in assists and rebounds. So, I mean, you look at what these two guys are bringing to the table. It's, we'll say, added 25 points a game, 13, 14 rebounds. Like, that's a really solid 1-2 punch that you've now added for the front court and beyond. I feel really good about the depth and the overall construction of the roster. Our guy Josh in the Toyota chat says, he said Rex Steiner, Pasquarelli, Nunez, Augie, and Bemba as a starting 5. Booth and Butler probably first off the bench. I think that's possible for sure. I think there's also a good chance that somebody like Darnez Slater could start at the 2. I think you play Pasquarelli at the 3 potentially in that scenario, but it's certainly possible. Nuniz, I do think will be the 3, Augie the 4, and Bemba the 5. So I'm with you for the most part, but I think you've got a pretty good concept of what the rotation is. In my notes here, I've got Rex Steiner at the 1. You have JoJo, who I think will play kind of a Kyan Evans year 1 type role. At the 2, maybe it's Darnez Slater, maybe it's Pasquarelli, depending on what happens at the 3. Maybe it's Jace Butler. But I've got Darnez Slater at the 2, Pasquarelli at the 3, 2-3, very similar role. Well, no, that's a good. No, you're right. I'm counting 6 spots here. So I think I would have Rex Steiner at the 1, Pasquarelli at the 2. I guess I would be with you. Nunez at the 3, Augie at the 4, and Jap at the 5. I'm glad you commented that because I was able to see it visually in my head. I was doing math wrong, which is unsurprising. But yeah, I think that is probably what your lineup looks like. You have Rex Steiner at the 1. You have Pasquarelli at the 2, Nunez at the 3, Augie at the 4, Bemba at the 5. But I think you'll also be able to go long at times. And, maybe you put like Booth at the 3 and you bring in a Jorgensen and Bemba at the same time, depending on how those guys kind of gel together. The thing about Jorgensen that some of these other guys don't have in terms of just what they bring to the table is he's a little bit more skilled. He's a better shooter for sure. So I think there is a pretty substantial portion of minutes that could be on the table for him, even if he's not in the starting lineup. But I think you redshirt Docker Tedeschi, who's somebody that's intriguing, but just needs to put on a ton of muscle and weight. Looks like a string being out there, despite the fact that he's a great shooter. But there's just going to be an opportunity for these guys to develop. Frederick says, what role would McConan be put in I see him more as a 4, but I do think that the path to playing time could be difficult for him this year, just given that they did bring all those guys back and the fact that they did sign a couple of 4s. I think he'll be trying to basically compete with Kerry Booth for minutes, would be my guess coming in. He's highly, highly athletic. He's just really raw. And he's another guy who just needs time to develop behind the scenes. I think he could be a nice piece for you. The question is, how soon is he going to be ready for a potential expanded role? But I do think him and Darnell Slater are guys that the staff is really high on, as well as the incoming freshmen. So it is exciting that you have this nice mix here of potential youth that could pop off and transfers that you bring in that are proven in some cases, more project picks in other cases in terms of Booth and Butler. But those guys have really high ceilings, and under the right coaching, if they're put in a position where they can maximize their skill sets, which I do think they will in this offense as their natural fits, I think you have a chance to be quite good in year one under Ali. Now, like the schedule will be a big factor, who do you play, all that kind of stuff. Right now they're in the battle for Atlantis. They also have the CU game on the books, so that's good. Don't think Tad's going to be ducking the Rams this year. They should be coming back to Fort Collins. I think that goes back to a multi-year agreement that the schools came to before this past season. But we'll see. I think there's a lot of excitement for this program going into the year, and considering how they lost Nico Medved and then saw Cayenne go to UNC and Jalen Crocker-Johnson go to Minnesota, there's a world in which this offseason ended up being devastating, and everyone felt like it was all over. Obviously, they have not even stepped on the court yet. They're going to have to still go out and earn it and prove it and all that fun stuff. But there's legitimate reason to view CSU as a front runner, I think, in the league going into next year. I think Utah State should be really good. San Diego State's reloading. We'll see, how Nevada, Boise, some of these other teams shape up. But I think the Rams should absolutely be right there in the mix and in the top group of perceived contenders going into the season. I will be very interested to see where CSU ultimately gets picked in the preseason poll. I think I'd take them 3rd right now if I had to make a way too early. There's just a lot of unknown. I'd probably pick Utah State just given who they have returning. But I like where they're at. I think the hope should be to make it back to the tournament. So really love where this program is at. I think the future is very much bright, and now they just want to continue to climb and make that ascension. They've made a lot of progress here these last couple of years. Now the key is not cooling off and not letting some of that momentum slip away that you built up. All right, let's get out of here in just a second, but I do want to go through my 10 things I love about CSU and Fort Collins. Taylor in the Toyota chat says, is Nuniz the only player with 1 year left? Off the top of my head, I think that's correct. Sounds correct. There might be one other guy I'd have to go through. I'm trying to go through the roster off the top of my head, but I think as far as the additions go, all the transfers have at least 2 years other than him. So yeah, I think you're right on that. Bemba should have 2 years. Yeah, I think you're right on that. All right, 10 things I love about CSU and Fort Collins. Love to hear you guys respond, throw out some suggestions to come back as well. Are getting a little bit corny, admittedly, but we obviously all have a passion and an appreciation for this university, for this community, everything that's associated with it. And in honor of I Love CSU Day, which is every April 18th, I just thought it'd be a fun way to kind of go down memory lane, throw out some things, reminisce a little bit. So let's just get it started here. First things first, the Oval, any time of the year. The Oval, to me, perfectly represents what makes the CSU campus so special. It's not a concrete jungle. You've got all this space and gorgeous trees and grass. And like for me, when I visited the other campuses around the state, there were a lot of great ones. DU has an incredible campus. The buildings at CU are admittedly gorgeous. And then, you've got the Flatirons right behind it. That's a great view. It doesn't feel like the CSU campus, though, just in terms of the openness and the greenness. And it's just so gorgeous, man. Like, whether it be in the fall, with the leaves changing, or in the spring when everything's blooming, even in the winter, when you get it on a perfect snowy day and it looks like it's straight out of a Christmas movie, the Oval is just special. There's a reason that it's one of the first things they show you on your CSU tour. And I know that it's kind of funny that we don't actually spend that much time, or at least most students don't, in the Oval in their actual collegiate experience. There's just not that many classrooms other than like some math buildings, some administrative buildings, and a couple of big lecture halls. But the Oval, to me, like, if you had to show anybody just one spot on campus, that would be my choice. Moby Madness. It's been such an influential aspect in my life. I've spent so many hours in Moby. When I worked for the football team, we were in the McGraw Center, which is attached to Moby. From the Collegian to what I'm doing now, to even like when I was a student in the stands, some of my favorite memories all time are associated with Moby Madness. The 10 miles run, seeing the Orange Out and then the Harlem Shake, like that was when I was a senior in high school. It affirmed to me that there was nowhere else in the world that I could go other than CSU. I had to be a part of that magic. I had to be able to experience that. And there are few places that bring me as much joy, that give me just a happy feeling, than when I walk into Moby. When it's packed, when it's roaring, it's as good of an atmosphere from a sporting standpoint as there is in the state, and I'll stand by that. Football Saturdays, obviously, you only get 6 of them a year in Fort Collins, sometimes 7, but there's just something special about it. Walking around campus, smelling the grilling, hearing the music, seeing all the different tailgating groups. It's a different experience, admittedly, at Canvas than it was at Hughes. And there are some aspects of the tailgate scene that I miss at Hughes, just everybody being a little bit closer together. It was just kind of easier to maneuver, I felt like. But the fact that everybody gets to come back and be on campus and have a little bit of their college experience every Saturday, I just think it's so cool. And Canvas is obviously an incredible facility. I think winning, with consistency would allow people to associate like football Saturdays with a little bit better memories than they've maybe had at the beginning of the first decade, I guess, or so of Canvas now. But man, a football Saturday in Fort Collins is incredible. The Ramskeller. How freaking cool is it that we have a fully functional brewery on the CSU campus? It's still one of my favorite things to hit up. My brother works down there now. He runs the Wing Shack and the Sexy Sammy's. The food options on campus are so superior these days to when I was a student. But the LSC as a whole is just a really cool building. There's so much to offer in there. The bookstore's awesome. The whole thing, the collegiate newsrooms down there. But the Ramskeller is obviously the most unique element of it. I love to sit down there, have a beer or two, and hang out. City Park in the summer, not technically on campus, but one of the things that I like about City Park in the summer in particular, a few less students on campus. It's typically the older students, that are living, out of the dorms. I feel like when you start going to City Park in the summer, like as a sophomore, as a junior, as a senior, it's kind of how you begin the integration process of going from just a student to a Fort Collins resident. And it's where they kind of intersect, like the food trucks, you'll see families running around, you'll see students throwing a Frisbee. It's just a really cool vibe. And I love where I'm living these days, but I do miss living a little bit closer to City Park and just, being able to walk around and throw a baseball or throw a Frisbee and catch some sunshine. It's just a great vibe. Going the other way, Old Town in the winter, straight out of a Christmas movie with the lights in Old Town. You get the snow coming down, you're walking around all the bars and the local businesses. Like it's such a cool, I've already used vibe a couple of times, so for lack of a better term, vibe. But it's to me like what makes Fort Collins have a different feel than Boulder or even, Air Force in the Springs. It has a more old school college town, small town type feel. And I know Fort Collins has grown exponentially over the last 2 decades, so it's night and day from what it used to be. But it still has that kind of ag community, small town type feel. And for me, that's much more my pace of life. Like I love that about CSU. I love that about Fort Collins. I love Denver too. Like I'm not one of these anti-Denver guys, but my pace in terms of day to day, much more like that old town, walking through, saying hi to people and I love that. And especially in the winter when you've got the Christmas decorations, it's incredible. Sitting on a patio at a brewery and just enjoying good company. Brewery of your choice. There's 8 million of them. I will give a special shout out to Lucky Joe's, which doesn't really apply to this. That's more of a different vibe than sitting on the New Belgium or the Odell a patio and having a beer. Love Horse and Dragon. There's so many good options for boating, but to me, like when life slows down and you can just have one of those afternoons where you don't have anything else to do, but sit with good company, people you love, people you care about, maybe enjoy a little bit of sunshine, maybe you're listening to live music, and just have a cold beer or two and really live in the moment is kind of the perfect Fort Collins experience. Like it's kind of what it's all about. The Ramley in the community. I just think it's special to be a part of something greater than yourself. I have infinite examples of how this community has stood behind me over the years, from local businesses being willing to sponsor my own site back in the day to CSU fans funding a GoFundMe to send me to the Mountain West tournament when I was still in school, listening to my show, the kind words that people have said, little gestures, people giving me gifts. Like it's not what it's about, the gifts or any of that stuff, but the interactions and the genuine love that like we have as a community, and how people are willing to go above and beyond for each other. Like I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like the Ramley really does mean something in my experience. Like the amount of people that have been there for me in times of need, the amount of people that have been there for me to support me at my highest moments. Like it feels so cool because in a lot of ways, I feel like I've gotten to like grow up in front of some of these people. And I don't know, like it feels like my successes are their successes and likewise. And I've just got so much love for all the people in this community, and that's never going to change. The traditions, Ag Day, the Border War, the Rocky Mountain Showdown, and Grill the Buffs, and Homecoming, and the bonfire, even Comatose the Cannon firing off, chanting, I'm proud to be a CSU Ram, Fum song. I could name 40 different traditions that are special to me in one way or another for CSU, but to me, that's kind of what it's all about. That's what makes college sports a little bit more unique from the pro scene. Just some of those annual traditions and kind of the meaning behind them. It's really cool. There's not a lot like it in the rest of your life. The last thing I've got here, the food. Colorado, I think, gets a bad rep. And admittedly, I'm not like a cuisine expert. I'm not going to all the top restaurants in Chicago and New York City and international, all that. Like pretty basic. But there's great food here, guys. Panina is one of my favorite. Crazy Carl's, Mexicali, Elevated Sandwiches, Wing Shack, Teriyaki Wok. Like there's a million places that are so close to campus that are affordable. There's a nice variety. Back when I was a student, at least, they claimed that Fort Collins had the most restaurants per capita of anywhere in the country. I don't know if that's still true, but I believe it because there really is an endless assortment of options. There's so many good places, so many awesome local spots that you should support. Great chains as well, but I always try and support the local ones when I can. It's just a great community, man. I'm super into it. I love living up here. There's obviously things that could improve like any other city, but man, is it a special place. Monty High says, sitting on the third floor of the library, looking out at the green space and the foothills, come out reading poetry. I'm with you, man. The library does have some great views. There's some awesome views in general. If you're just like on the IM fields too, and you look out on the mountains, I mean, it's an incredible campus. Waggle says, Big Al's Burgers and stuffed pizza saved me when I was in college. Yeah, we all had our spots, right? Like, man, I've got $10 and I just want something consistent. I had a million of those. I had a lot of teriyaki wok, a lot of beat the clock at Crazy Carl's, get like a large one-topping pizza for like $5. It was awesome. Fireworks on homecoming weekend, Taylor says in the Toyota chat, another great one, along with the bonfire and just everything. I'm big on tradition. You know, I romanticize all that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are some of the things I love about CSU. And honestly, I could probably come up with 200 more things, but I thought that was kind of a fun way just to wrap up this show and celebrate today that celebrates a place that's very special to all of us. And that, of course, is CSU. So shout out to all you guys for rocking with us. I appreciate everybody. We will be live again Wednesday. Might have an audio only podcast between now and then, depending on how the travel schedule stuff goes. We'll be cutting back a little bit in the off season just because I've got the NHL playoffs, but still going to be delivering at least multiple shows per week, written content, tons of tweets, everything you guys are used to. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.